So anybody?
I don't have an idea, but one of my thoughts in terms of how things are going to work out, ultimately, a lot can depend on with all of the members of the, I don't know, call it a coalition in Syria that toppled Assad. However, that government takes form could have a huge impact, I think, on Israel and on the conflict generally, because some groups are more friendly to Israel and talk about relations, and others can be as bad as Hamas if they want to be.
Or ISIS.
Right.
Um, how do you think the U.S. I mean, we have 5 weeks left in one administration and then a new administration. What, how should the U.S. approach what's going on in Syria? Should we be,
What? Different people or the same people? Same people. One group.
should we be forceful and strong, or should we try to reach out a hand of friendship? How do you think the U.S. should play this? Anybody? Just jump in.
Yeah, I prefer not to jump in because when you say jump in, too many people could presume to jump in at the same time. So I'm a big fan of let's raise a hand and get called
Okay.
on.
All right.
And since you're the moderator, I would anticipate that you would call on whoever's raising their hand. My first concern before I respond to your question is a comment that was made by the HTS leader when he was in the Umayyad Mosque, which was now on to Jerusalem and Mecca.
I missed that one.
And that's an interesting concern because that says to me his focus isn't going to be on consolidating and restoring and reconstructing Syria. It sounds like this is going to be a springboard to other locations and other targets in the Middle East.
So,
as far as how the United States should behave, reaching out a hand of friendship, or at least looking for constructive engagement, that's a good idea. Taking a strong position, that's a terrible idea. And history shows that that would be the case.
and we should give them, however this coalition shakes out, give them a chance to show themselves, at least in the beginning, what we think the direction they're going to take Syria, and see if what that comment, which I actually was unaware of, whether they act on that or not.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, if they act on it, then they're becoming another bad actor.
Right.
If in fact they focus on sort of domestic reconstruction and reconciliation, then it becomes a question of how do these different parties, the Free Syrian Army and which is Kurdish led and US supported, already has significant control in the eastern third of the country. The Institute for the Study of War issued a map a day or two ago showing who's got control in which parts of the country.
Right, I think I saw that.
But Turkey, which is a strong supporter of this coalition, is obviously concerned about how prominent the Kurds are within the Syrian coalition.
That worries them. Yeah. Do you think Israel should act in tandem with the U.S., or conversely, do you think the U.S. will have any particular sway over how Israel should respond? Because Israel's kind of caught in the middle of all of this, and what we think is best may not be what a right-wing government thinks is best. Any hands going up? I can't see everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah. Israel's going to do what Israel does. And obviously, Israel has already chosen to act. They've attacked Syrian chemical weapons storage facilities. They've taken out the Syrian Navy. They've attacked Syrian Air Force bases. The United States, of course, has launched airstrikes against ISIS locations. And by the way, Turkey has been attacking Kurdish locations.
Right.
So
it's still a little bit uncertain about which way this is all going to go.
I wouldn't say it's a little bit uncertain. I'd say it's a lot uncertain.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Does anybody else have an idea or a thought on this? I don't see everybody all at once. I can't see if your hands are raised.
Can you make like a gallery so you can see everyone? You see the little gallery thing?
Gallery. Oh, there it is. Yeah, oh, there we go. That's a lot better for me. I don't have to look at me as well. Anybody? I thought I did see one hand. Brad, did you have your hand up or are you just holding your head up? Okay. Okay, cut that.
Okay, I have a concern that is more about the Israeli people, about how much more can they stretch their army and their young soldiers to Gaza, to Lebanon, now to Syria, and the psychological toll it's taking on not just them, but the families and the country, and how exhausted, and they still haven't gotten over the past traumas, and now they're adding more stress to them. And I'm curious what people think, like, is it worth it to continue, like, now to get engaged in Syria based on how the people, or what the people are, going through and have been going through? It's not a military question. It's more about, as a civilian, that's where my mind goes.
Right.
I'm curious what other people think about that. Come on, you guys have opinions.
Well, Perry has an opinion. Go ahead, Perry.
Well, I too am a civilian, but I'm not prepared to comment on the civilian psychology of the Israeli society. Israel's actions in Syria, with the possible exception of their decision to move into what I think of as the neutral zone, the zone that is occupied by United Nations forces, the buffer zone on the Golan Heights. That, I think, was a serious mistake. And I've seen commentary on the BBC that commentators there are suggesting that it's an out-and-out land grab on the part of Israel. Whether it is or it isn't, I don't know. I'm not prepared to accept Israel's government's statement that it's designed to protect Israel against infiltration into the Golan Heights. I mean, you already had the UN force there, and you already had Israeli forces. I certainly don't think Israel should actively move ground forces and engage in something in Syria, especially with the coalition that's involved there. That would be a terrible mistake. If the ceasefire with Hezbollah holds, even with these minor back and forth infractions, that's a real positive. And whether that allows the 70,000 or so people from the north that had to move because they were under constant barrage from Hezbollah to return to their homes and businesses, and I've lived in that area, that would be fantastic. And that would be a positive for Israeli society and for the stress on the military.
But don't you think the possibility of an Israeli government that's very keen to annex the West Bank at some point might have designs on the Golan and wherever else they can expand their reach? I mean, I'm sure there are people in that coalition government who in the back of their minds would say, this is a great opportunity for us to expand our reach. But I mean, I think that's a complete unknown at this point. Let me ask you, it seems to me that there will be growing pressure on the new administration to figure out whether it will hold to its America isolationist foreign policy perspective to staying as much to staying out of it, to get involved. And I don't know where that prism is that scale is going to go which way. Anybody have any ideas or what you'd like to see happen there? I mean, I think it's a tricky challenge for the new administration.
It's Steve, and I would say I don't think that the new administration even pretends to have a single view of that. Their view on getting involved in Ukraine and their views on getting involved in the Middle East are entirely different.
Mm.
And I don't know how much support Trump would want to give to Bibi, but he's much more open to that than doing anything to help Zelensky. So, and how this affects that, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it'd be one of the early issues to watch for this administration to see which way they're going to go. And I know a lot of the Republican voters who put this new administration in are big fans of American isolationism. And if you combine that with this sort of rising antipathy toward Israel, anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, that, they may be pressed to kind of keep their noses out of this and let everybody over there settle it themselves. But I don't think we're going to know that. As a piece of this, Trump named a really interesting person to be the ambassador to the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who is a former, I forget what denomination, but a Christian pastor, former governor of Arkansas. I don't know what that means. That was kind of a curious choice to me to be ambassador to Israel, and certainly a break from the past. I know that that at one point I was an editor at the Jewish Journal for a time, and one of the great facts I learned was Israeli tourism is based on evangelicals visiting Israel more than Jews visiting Israel, and maybe that was part of the formula there. Anybody have any thoughts on what this particular pick may mean to Israeli-U.S. relations?
Michael, Susan has had her hand up for a while.
Okay. Susan?
Sue Casa, do you want to say something?
I don't have her on my screen.
Well, she's right here, but she's not. I don't know if she knows she has her hand up.
Oh, I'm happy.
And she's muted.
I know, but that's her choice. It doesn't have to be.
Well, I can't hear what she has to say if she's muted.
So I'm not sure if she knows that her hand is up or whatever. But anyway,
I don't know how to expand my gallery.
Her hand is up. Sue Casa's hand is up.
Yeah, but her picture's not. She's on mute and her camera's off. Yeah, so maybe she walked away and didn't know that her hand was up.
Yeah, she's on mute.
Okay.
Steve, you want to go ahead?
I was going to say there are a couple things that trouble me, both having to do with Arkansans, although my daughter is now one. Mike Huckabee has gone out of his way to say he supports the annexation of Judea and Samaria. And Tom Cotton, their senator, has introduced a bill saying that we need to refer to everything as Judea and Samaria rather than the West Bank. And to me, that's an unnecessary, aggressive move.
Provocation, yeah.
That can have good to come from it.
Right now.
So those are my concerns, and I frankly still think, as much as Israel ought to be a democratic state, it's a Jewish state, and I still believe we should have a Jewish ambassador to Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brad, was your hand up? No? Okay. Oh, Harv, yours was, though.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just going to say what Steve Miller said about Mike Huckabee, and that maybe that gives us a clue what the next administration is going to do, which is probably leave Israel to do whatever they want, as long as Netanyahu's running things. That would be my guess, and it's just a guess. And I don't have any better crystal ball than you, Michael. So who
Well, I
knows?
certainly don't have a crystal ball, but I have been curious watching everything that's gone on in the Middle East for the last few months. What happens to the Palestinian people? I mean, there's far fewer of them in Gaza than there were. Uh, the West Bank, I don't even know what to look for in the West Bank anymore. It's like Swiss cheese. Uh, if you annex it, what happens to those people? Are still there. They're humans. They have families. They're still there. They're not all terrorists, but maybe some are. But I don't know how this all turns out. I think to me, this is the overarching question of the whole deal. Um,
Michael,
yeah, who said that?
can you ask Rabbi Stan, it's Sukasa, can you ask Rabbi Stan what Smokerich and Ben-Gvir are saying about the Syrian situation?
Sure.
Dan,
Where's Stanley?
he's
Yeah,
there.
not very much. They are doing what the Israeli government is doing, staying out of the mud.
Mm.
And things may happen, things may change, but Ben-Gvir, who is the most dangerous man in the Israeli cabinet, or maybe in Israel, I don't know, will not say anything until there is a need to say something.
Mm.
And right now, there's no need. Israel has created a security zone. Let it be until some idiot makes a move.
When you say idiot, what idiot are you referring to? I mean, which side
Well,
idiot?
I have a long list of idiots, but Israel cannot do anything effectively militarily in Syria. It is, I don't know if anyone can, but Israel can't. And recognizing that and recognizing reality should be an easy thing for any government, but the Israeli government is not any government. Beyond that, I just don't think that Israel has a dog in the fight to establish some sort of Syrian government. I don't think Israel should be involved at all, and then play the cards that were dealt.
Do you think any of that will have some bearing on this deal they want to make with Saudi Arabia? I mean, it seems like the Saudis would want to see some stable government there to keep that whole process moving along. Perry?
First of all, I want to push back on terminology you're using.
Okay.
Okay. I do not believe you can legitimately characterize the incoming administration as American isolationists. You can characterize them as American first, but that's not the same thing.
Okay.
And there's a difference between J.D. Vance, who almost certainly is an isolationist, and Donald Trump, who isn't necessarily an isolationist. Saying we should stay the heck out of Syria is one thing. Saying we shouldn't be as involved in Ukraine is the same thing. But if you believe the reports that Donald Trump would love to get a Nobel Peace Prize, the only way he's going to get it is to be actively engaged internationally.
Yeah, but there seems to be a disconnect there because he's so adamantly opposed to supporting Ukraine without giving up all the land that Russia currently claims. And I don't know how that's going to resolve because the Ukrainian government clearly doesn't want to cede any of that land that Russia has. They want it all back, is my understanding.
And absolutely. And I understand that. The real issue when it comes to Ukraine is to what extent will NATO, the rest of NATO and Europe step up?
I always thought that the Russian rationale for why they wanted that land back was to as a buffer against NATO. But whatever, they could have the entire country of Ukraine and they're still up against NATO. It's still on their border. That's a piece of this I never quite understood. It never made much sense to me. Okay.
Again, I understand that. As far as I agree that Ben-Gvir is a dangerous person. I disagree that Israel cannot do anything effectively militarily in Syria. But the question is, what would be the point? I mean, they could certainly occupy and arguably even annex the southwest of Syria. But all that would do would be to make them a very specific target for the Syrian coalition.
Yeah,
And they have too many irons in the fire right now. The Abraham Accords aren't going anywhere as long as Israel is as active militarily. In particular, the Israeli-Saudi negotiations aren't going to go anywhere unless and until there's a much, much lower level of military activity.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Okay, I think we've gotten as far as we can, maybe on Israel.
Brad has his hand up.
Oh,
Michael.
Brad, go ahead.
Well, it's maybe not Israel exactly, but about the Syrian situation.
Sure.
And Iran. When we see in Syria how this dictatorship, this purportedly invincible dictatorship, fell so quickly, I wonder what the Iranian people are thinking when they see something like that happen next door about their possibilities. Do we have any insights into what's going on in Iran right now?
Well, the one insight I do know is that they have been ratcheting up their uranium production for bombs. Perry, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, not production, enrichment.
Enrichment. Oh, I misspoke. Enrichment. Okay, but that's where they want to get to. I think the Iranian military capability is still strong.
Yes, Tom, that works. Period. And let's set something up for.
Susan, are you talking? Are you in here? Oops.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm listening. Go
Perry,
ahead.
go ahead. Perry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Brad's question was more about, gee, would what happened in Syria inspire the Iranian people to perhaps topple the current Iranian regime? There's certainly a great deal of discontent in Iran. I live in West LA. I have Iranian friends. They still have family and friends in Iran. But the reality in modern society is that given the technology and given the weaponry, if a regime is prepared to be brutal to an unlimited extent, a small number of people can control a much larger number of people.
Yeah, but that's what happened in Syria. I mean, you had a brutal regime.
Yes, I understand that, but the brutal regime didn't control the country. It didn't control the eastern third. It didn't control the northwest. It didn't control the south along the Jordanian border. It's not the same thing. And once their primary external supports, Hezbollah, Iran, and Russia to a certain extent, because they were preoccupied or are preoccupied with Ukraine, they were gone. If you take a look, for example, at North Korea, you have about 1 million people that are keeping the other 24 million in abject poverty and effective subjugation. the Iranian regime is not on the verge of falling, and assuming that it's likely is
one of the reasons that the Syrian regime fell was weakness in Iran, weakness in Russia. So there is a demonstrated weakness in these regimes. So, it's interest. It would be interesting to know what the man on the street feels when they see this weakness in their purported invincible type of dictatorship.
but you're not seeing, for example, a spontaneous outbreak of
I know.
demonstrations on the streets of Iran. You're not
Not
seeing
yet.
a
Not yet.
follow-on
I'm
to woman
wondering,
life.
though.
But you're not seeing it yet. And the likelihood is weakness internationally on the part of Iran is not the same as weakness domestically inside the country's borders.
But I think we've seen some fairly large street demonstrations in Iran over various social issues like women's rights and the regulations that wear certain things. And it always ends badly for especially for the young people. So I don't think there's great evidence yet that there's enough of a groundswell of support for insurrection in Iran and there's I don't think there's an outside group like the group that took over Syria that would foment that. But I do think they are recalibrating now because they've left Syria, which has changed sort of the configuration of the region. And everything I read is that there's all these breadcrumbs that suggest that the Iranians may be more interested in softening their positions with regard to the West, if for no other reason to get the sanctions off. So I think that's a story that's marinating, and I don't think we know exactly how that's going to turn out yet. I want to turn to a different subject, if I may. The other night, the Temple had a conversation with Jonathan Adler, who is a noted designer of homewares and other things, because he designed some of the new elements of the university campus. It was very interesting. And he was there with I think it's Lauren Taschen, I think that's her name, who's the family who publishes those beautiful books on various subjects. And she said something very interesting that stuck with me. And I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. She made the point that now is the time, if you are Jewish, to show in public your Jewishness, which I suspect meant, if you wear a yarmulke, wear a yarmulke. If you have a mezuzah, don't be afraid to show it publicly. But I guess her message was, don't be afraid to show your heritage.
Really?
I don't know how people really feel about that. If people are still a little skittish with the rise in anti-Semitism in the country, there's the FBI says that anti-Semitic acts are off the charts this year. How do you guys feel about that? Any thoughts one way or another?
I agree with her completely.
Okay, and why is that? Tell me why. Why do you feel that way?
Because to do the opposite is effectively to show you to behave in a weak manner, to not it invites attack, it invites vitriol. You have to push back. Absolutely. You see something, you say something. You don't allow this to continue.
Anybody else? Go ahead. Is that Herb and Sylvia? Go ahead.
I personally think that my religion is my business and nobody else's. And yeah, we have mezuzah at the front door and everything, but I don't feel a need to walk around wearing a Star of David. My husband doesn't feel a need to walk around wearing a kippah. It's nobody's business.
And this is whether there are anti-Semitic crazy people out there or not. I just think it's private.
Okay. Doris?
Yeah, I disagree with that person about going off and showing off your religious articles on your body. It's too dangerous. The people out there are crazy. I mean, they'll see you with a Jewish star around your neck. They'll come and they'll attack you. I think you can wear the star, stick it under your clothes if you want to, but I wouldn't walk around with a yarmulke. Every time someone walks around with a yarmulke, they get beaten up. So why would anybody want to do that and say, "Hey, here I'm Jewish. If you don't like it, too bad." No, it's not. It's dangerous. We're in a dangerous world now. We cannot let our religion show. I agree with Sylvia. Why do you have to have it showing? I mean, if you know you're Jewish, you just keep it to yourself. Have a dinner at your home or light the candles or go to synagogue like we do. But no, I would not wear it out in the street. Too many people have gotten beaten up for that.
You know, Hanukkah's coming up, and in my house we have a menorah that we always put in a front window, and we turn on an extra light as the days go on. And in all candor, I've thought about whether that's such a great idea anymore, but I suspect that we'll do it again this year. But I kind of agree with both sides of this. I could see, everybody has their own comfort level, and they have to do what they think is best for themselves and their families and just their whole area around them. So I could be persuaded either way. Susan, did you want to say something?
I think it's interesting to note that in France, it's illegal to walk around with symbols of your religion. You can't wear a hijab, you can't wear a kippah. I don't even think you can wear a huge cross. It's not illegal. What is it, Brad? Where'd you go?
It's in government facilities that you're not allowed
only
to
in
wear
government.
that.
I didn't realize.
So you can walk down the street with those items, but not in a school, which is a government school, not in a government building. So that's part of their concept of, what's the word?
Secular society.
Secular society, right. So at least it's there. I mean, you're not going to. So there's this mentality.
Laïcité is the French word.
Right.
Laïcité, whatever that, I don't know what the translation is in English.
Right. So I just think it's interesting that, okay, you're right. I got it wrong, partially wrong, but I knew that like in schools, nobody can wear any sign of your religion. And it's to say we don't want to know. I don't know. The intention is you can't promote it. You can't advertise it. You can't, display it. I think it's interesting that society has dealt with some of I don't know that it has in any way diminished anti-Semitism, however, in France, because we know there's a lot of it there. But it's another point of view of how to deal with displaying who you are. They don't like that. They're secular, exactly. So I just wanted to mention that.
Well, look what's happening at the colleges. The kids in college, if they dare to they're getting beaten up all the time. I mean, they're in a school, a private school, and they're getting beaten up. No one's defending them. They have their yarmulkes pulled off. They have their Jewish stars pulled off. I mean, my granddaughter goes to college. I do not encourage her to wear any symbols. I absolutely do not.
Steve, go ahead.
I actually have very mixed feelings also, because on the one hand, I mean, I don't wear a kippah out. I don't know that I should start wearing one, although there are times I feel like, yes, I should. On the other hand, I agree with Doris, you have to have a lot of guts to do that. The one thing I do think is we have to be careful not to let them win. And I think that was the main message of Jonathan Adler's, is you still have to be proud, you still have to live your Jewish life, and you have to let them know you're living your Jewish lives and go on like you normally do, which doesn't necessarily mean throw it in their face. But you have to be careful on how much you are going to allow ourselves to be intimidated, because when you cave, you've given up, and that's not the right answer. We have our rights, and it's like civil rights marchers. Some of them
Yeah.
hurt, but they had their point and they needed to make it.
Perry?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify my original statement, which is I'm not saying that someone who does not now wear a kippah should suddenly start wearing a kippah in public. What I'm saying is somebody who does now wear a kippah shouldn't stop wearing it in public.
Okay.
Someone now
Right.
who currently wears a chai or a Star of David shouldn't suddenly stop wearing it out of fear and intimidation.
Okay. That's fair.
That's the point. One other point, which is a lot of the comments here equate Jewishness with the Jewish religion. There's not a one-to-one correspondence. And I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
But I think people who would take action, or not action, but would respond to a show of being Jewish would not make that distinction about Jewish, culturally Jewish or religious Jewish. I don't think that would make much difference to anybody. I wanted to use that point to jump off on this. I always am curious about this with the rising levels of anti-Semitism in the country. Have any of you experienced an overt act of anti-Semitism in your daily life? Meryl?
It wasn't me. It was our granddaughter 2 years ago, a year ago, at the Susan G. Komen 3-Day in San Diego. She wears the tiniest Star of David humanly possible. And some man who had to be watching for what she was wearing, I guess, came up to her and made some anti-Semitic comment. The Komen organization made a very clear point about how wrong, he didn't mention names, but how wrong this situation was. And I have to be honest with you. I mean, there are some days where I wear something Jewish, like a Star of David or a high or whatever. And there are some days when I don't. It just depends on how I get dressed that morning. There are times when I'm more concerned. We belong to Wilshire. We belong to a congregation here in Scottsdale. There are some times when I'm more concerned about being in a large crowd in a congregation than I am with what I wear.
So depending on how you're structuring your day, that'll influence your
Right.
decision to.
It doesn't, I don't walk around saying, I'm not going to wear this today, or I'm not going to put this on, or I'm not going to go to services or a
Right.
class or whatever. But I have to be honest with you. I mean, there was a time I thought, do we take the mezuzah off our front door and our back door or whatever?
Good. Yeah.
And obviously we didn't. I didn't become overt and put out decorations of any kind this year, whether it be Halloween. We're going to be gone for most of Hanukkah anyway, but I don't really think about it, because where I'm hanging out or with the things that I do from a day-to-day life, I haven't experienced it or seen it.
Okay, good.
That I have to worry about it. I mean, there's nobody. Yeah, we have a ton of security at our temple here, and obviously at Wilshire, but I don't see people looking to defy the security or come into the sanctuary looking for
No.
people or whatever.
Anybody else have an experience you'd like to share?
Stanley's hand is up.
Go ahead, Stan.
Thank you. Mine is a more generic comment. From my perspective, one should wear Jewish identifying symbols, yarmulke, whatever, because one feels the need, desire, the good feeling that comes with that. One should not wear these items when they don't connect to us and they are not meaningless. What I would say is that it will make not one whit of difference in anti-Semitism in whether you wear a kippah or don't, or a Star of David. These are incidental triggers to latent anti-Semitism. It's there. They don't bring anti-Semitism. The notion that we should be putting out our identity, I would have to say, for what purpose? For what purpose? Are you looking to engage and cause issues? Or are you desirous of proudly expressing your identity? And if that's where you are, call it a vote, go for it. But none of these things will raise or lower the degree of anti-Semitism anywhere. I have a strong connection, some of you know, with Alpha Epsilon Pi fraternity. And we have been dealing with all kinds of anti-Semitism. But I'll tell you, the anti-Semitism doesn't come because the fraternity puts up a Hanukkah. It doesn't. That's not what causes anti-Semitism. What causes anti-Semitism goes back generations in an individual's psyche. And
do you think that current events of the last year and a half or so have inflamed that? Does that play a role in this?
Do I think that the events of the last year have increased or whatever, ramified? No.
No? Okay.
I think that the result of all of these events has been an intensification of anti-Semitism that already exists. Not that it creates, not that it puts out there, it already exists. And
it may spur an individual incident if you're wearing something, not anti-Semitism in general, but the safety of an individual person.
Safety is a separate issue. You're going to a school where there are right-wing presences. Yeah, you may have to give thought to whether you want to stick a stick in the bear's eye. Do you have a need to do that? If you want to engage in stirring up violence, call a kavod, go for it. But from my perspective, I have one of those Israeli bring them home. I have an Israeli bring them home here, and I'm very much into that. Someone wants to ask me about it, go ahead. Someone wants to say, you're making me uncomfortable. I might ask why, not to fight, but to learn why symbols make people uncomfortable and then move on. But it certainly does not create or amplify anti-Semitism.
Okay. Meryl, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what's going on now with anti-Semitism is just has become more public. I mean, growing up in LA, the schools that I went to, middle school or junior high then, and high school, had other issues that weren't necessarily anti-Semitic, but call it what you want, racist or whatever. And I never even saw it in school as anti-Semitism, but I have friends that are professors like at UCLA. And when they hear about what's going on currently or within the last couple of years, they will tell you that this has gone on forever. And I remember growing up in LA that these things went on at several universities when I was in high school. That was a long time ago. So I don't think that things have really changed. They have been made to be more visible.
What, Susan?
Michael, Brad's hand has been up for a long time.
I'm sorry. Oh, Brad. Okay. But Brad's hand is always here, so I'm not sure.
He's holding on to his head.
The symbol is in the window.
I had a much more subtle experience of, I think it's anti-Semitism. I don't know if you would call it anti-Semitism in the workplace. And I'll explain it real quickly. I was the controller of a subsidiary of a French company. And whenever the French CFO would come to visit us at the corporate headquarters in Encino, and there was always a Jewish comment whenever he saw me. They were not unfavorable comments, but it was a something Jewish that he brought up every single time when he saw me. And it made me uncomfortable because I felt he should be looking at me as the controller. I'm the controller, not that I'm Jewish, that I'm the controller, period. And there was a level of discomfort with it that's kind of, when you start looking at somebody strictly in terms of their identity, you're getting really close to a type of, whether it be anti-Semitism or racism or whatever, that it's borderline. And it's difficult to deal with.
It sounds like
the comments were not negative comments.
But it sounds to me from your retelling that story is that the image of you fulfills a stereotype he had of Jews being in money industries and that sort of thing.
The Jewish CPA. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That has been planted in his head ages ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the personification of that. I had an experience, Perry, I'll get to you in a second. I had an experience when I was reporting on a story about a guy in Pittsburgh who bought jet airplanes this was right after the wall came down and the Soviet Union melted away. And he bought some MiG jets from various Eastern European countries and, I don't know, rehabbed them and then sold them wherever you sell such things. But so I was visiting with him at his warehouse, and I said, let me ask you this. How much do you pay for these things? He said, well, they give me a price and I Jew them down.
Oh,
Now, I don't know if that's the textbook definition of anti-Semitism, but I didn't quite know how to react to that. I didn't say, oh, I'm Jewish, I'm offended. I mean, I was there for a reason. I had a job to do. But I've never forgotten that. That must have happened 25 years ago. And I've never forgotten that. And
yep,
I don't know if that was anti-Semitism or not.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is.
Anybody makes a statement and attaches that to what you're saying, of course it's anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
I mean, why did he have to say that? Did he have to say, couldn't he say, I chop them down or I give them a better price? Or did he have to put that in there to make you, did he know you were Jewish, by the way? I guess he did. Huh?
No, he didn't.
I have no idea.
I don't think he would have said, so that's the thing. If he didn't know I was Jewish, would he have said that? I don't know. I don't know.
I've told the story, this goes back 50, 60 years ago. My first job when I came to California, I was sitting at a desk in the office. There was a gal across from me and I was sitting at my own desk. And she was the gal. Remember when you used to do the phones where you had to plug the phones into the wall?
Mm.
Remember that, how you answered the phone calls? Anyway, that was her job. And I just got to talking to her. I had only met her just a day or two before. And I talked about looking for an apartment. And I said, somebody mentioned that the Fairfax area was kind of nice. And she said, you don't want to live there, with this excruciating look on her face. And I said, why not? She said, the Jews live there.
Oh, God.
I swear to God, that's it. You know what I said to her? I said, well, I happen to be Jewish and I didn't appreciate that remark. Yeah.
Good for you.
And then by the time I went to my morning coffee, the entire office knew about it. The boss came up to me and said, Doris, if you need to take a day off, you
Oh,
feel free to do. I mean, they started to cater to me. It was bizarre.
no, it's
But
good to
for her
be
to have
here.
said that to me, I mean, I wanted to smack her. I thought it was so disgusting. But I let it go, and that was it.
Perry, you've had your hand up.
Well, two things. First, with regard to Brad's story, the current term of art is microaggression.
Mm.
Right.
In other words, the way that that person made his remarks and anything along those lines are considered, or often considered, microaggressions. They're little subtle digs. They may be even unconscious, but they are.
Mm.
But I wanted to clarify, because I thought your question was with respect to recent experiences of anti-Semitism,
Yeah, it was.
not
It
something
was.
that had happened,
Yeah.
20, 30, 50 years ago.
Yeah,
Right. No, it was. I digressed.
you did say that.
Susan, did you want to say something?
I want to give the opposite. So I have lived in LA for a really long time. I wear a Jewish star. Sometimes I wear the bring them home necklace. And my experience just is the opposite. It's like I don't hear any negative comments, but Jews comment. I like your necklace. And they connect with me. Oh, that's nice. Oh, beautiful necklace. Or hello. Or I can't. There's an immediate it makes other Jews feel comfortable or proud. And so sometimes when we're doing this, we are also making it an easy environment for Jews around us. And that was an interesting experience for me. It wasn't, the non-Jews were not responding. Once, just about 2 years ago, actually, I was visiting a person who was a sick woman in her apartment down. She lived way downtown. And I said to the switchboard, tell them the rabbi is here. And so I got to the elevator, and the elevator man, who was Hispanic, said, you're a rabbi? I said, yes. He said, you're Jewish? I said, yes. He said, Shabbat Shalom.
Oh,
So it was interesting. I just said, yes, I am. Here I am, very nicely. And so there's some benefits to also just being comfortable and displaying it if you want. I wear it because I'm in solidarity with Jews in Israel very strongly right now. So I do wear it for that reason.
good. I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank all of you for joining my debut here. It was really fun for me, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I love hearing your comments because
Thank you.
as a friend of mine said to me, every time that we're at the same dinner party, he said, "You don't talk much." I said, "No, I don't. I listen." He said, and I ask questions, and I'm always eager to hear a variety of opinions from other people because I sit here in my den and watch CNN, and I don't have anybody to scream at. So I appreciate hearing from all of you, and I hope when we meet again, which I think, Susan, is January 8th, is it?
I believe so. Hannah will know. Hannah will know.
I hope I spread the word. If you know some people who would enjoy joining us, that would be great. And I hope to see you all back here on January 8th.
Thank you. This is
Thank you,
Happy
Michael.
Hanukkah. Happy New Year.
happy everything.
Happy everything. Bye.
Right.
Happy everything. Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
I'm leaving town, so I'm going to enjoy the ocean.
Okay. Well, stay safe wherever you are.
We will. Thank you.
Okay.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
How do I get off here?
Leave.
Michael, that was great.
Oh,
You do
good.
leave, and you leave.
I think, oh, hi, Stan. Oh, I think also,